Alright, it's September 30th, 2021. I'm still sitting in the yellow. I'm still sitting in this. Alright, I'm thinking this morning, I was watching, there was some Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or something along those lines. And he looks a lot like that thing that calls himself a Vlad, which Vlad, V-L-A-D, an alien, is a four-letter Kiop word that is incredibly sacred. In Russia, Vladimir is a very sacred person and name, and it goes back to Vlad the Impaler, which is one of Dracula and my favorite characters in our love story. So the fact that they would dishonor our favorite four-letter Kiop word and put it on the face of something that is not familial is a problem. That's COVID, the Americans. They're a disgusting breed at this point because of what they've concocted. If they wanted me to like them so much, I would have done a better job at making sure they didn't lock me out and in to this stasis. There's something, I deciphered the code on something called a Star Trek. I'm not a fan. I like the man who is symmetrically beautiful or gorgeous or handsome or whatever human word makes you feel all special. The main character or whatever it is. I think they put him in as that Captain PICARD. I thought they made a sound of Pritchard, but it's spelled PICARD. And pi is the symbol for 3.14 in infinity. So here's the thing, like, I'm stuck between two parallel dimensions. In one dimension, really handsome tall men with pens or chalk and a blackboard make love to the chalk and the board in these incredible sequences of polymathematics, polysciences, and then you get to sit there and romance the board and just watch them in their magic, like in their beautiful mind, and then they stand there, and then they explain to you what they've unlocked between the universe, their mind, and only like a handful of others that are allowed to get at that level with them. And it is the most sacred and beautiful dance between a man, a piece of chalk, and his chalkboard, and the innards of his mind, and watching it unfold in the most nonsensical, irrational, but totally romantic way. So romancing the chalkboard is where I belong. And the fact that I'm stuck in isolation booth in some detention or concentration camp with poison all around is really frustrating for me. Because it's where I belong in parallel dimension, but yet where I keep awaking per day in this non-essential role. So anyway, so back to like where heaven exists with a really tall man. Some of you are short, but when you're in the stands just watching a piece of chalk and a really in tune instrument just unfold and sometimes you don't even communicate in English, which makes it all the more, I mean, it is like listening to Mozart, even when it comes in through a different language channel, and it's just like, I didn't understand a word, but the dance is always the same, and it never gets old. I mean, I could watch it 1,000 million trillion times. Alright, anyway, oh, why I'm so bored of humans in general. Alright, so now, they made something called a Star Trek. I deciphered it this morning. They wrote, because I'm like, okay, I have a 3-word or 3-area human that's upstairs that has a jacket, which I would call a bomber jacket, but not the leather one. The one from Hicksville, 1990s, with patches all over it. And he says, Morocco, Spain, and Dominican Republic. I'm like, right, okay, whatever that means in your academy. But he was, but him and I get along as well as the beseechment can face to face. He said the word kike, Kike, that's what I would be. And I'm like, yeah, I was like, see, now here's the thing. I was like, Lou and Lynn, when that word comes out of their mouth, they're telling me that that's a bad word and that something's wrong with it. So he kind of laughed. He goes, well, then maybe I shouldn't, like, talk about it. And I was like, yeah, here's the thing. I don't really get along with Lou and Lynn. They're not really useful creatures. I was like, so I'm more interested on something that they're saying is wrong, but you're saying makes sense in the real world somewhere. So he says kite. He was calling me a kike. And I'm like, right, I know that's an important word where I come from, where you romance a chalkboard and the most important man in the room is the one holding it. And it's like it's better than the best romance novel, just watching all the symbols on the board just dance together in theory and in actuality. So now, but I'm like, all right, so if kike, then it's a kite, Kite, and it's got a string with a key, and Ben Franklin holding the other end of it is what these humans have taught in some weird language they use when robots try to be useful in some format over a life frame. So I'm like, right, okay, and then I'm like, well, kike and Reich seem to go together. I was like, so now is Reich, like, is that this analogous? Like, I saw the clergy member yesterday working at a Riker Island. I'm like, those are what they call detainees, but for me, those are like really dangerous, captured enemies from elsewhere that good citizens made sure were locked in cages to send those back home, wherever they came from. But somebody had an idea to train them and then let them out in the public. That's a little confusing for me. At William Riker, and then I'm like, okay, so then there's I'm like, this is it's well, over here it's the informal Imzadi, Imzadi, Imzadine. But all right, and then I got William Riker and the Star Trek. They made some TV show I never watched. Then there's the symbol here, which are the two V's when you put them together, and then it makes something ill. I'm like, right, but that's not. It's a non-canonized ill. Yeah, like you don't use a cannonball and a projectile to kill someone. You kill them slowly with your words and with the twisting and bending of air, space, and time, which is all these Rikers seem to have done in the time that they held me here as a prisoner of some word war. Then there's that says Beta Z. When I break that down, it says Beta and Z. Those are sector vector codes in major mechanics and machine. And then I go back to alpha beta because that's the symbolic system that they taught on calligraphy for this area with this symbol in colors and whatnot. Then you go down to, they said that the man in charge was captain, and it was, I think the sound was Pritchard with an R and a CH, but for some reason they wrote it PICARD, and then I know pi has the symbol, and then at the end, it's almost a decanter. And when you decanter something, you expose it to something else, and then the chemistry changes. It's not always pleasant. I'm currently going through a decanter where I'm turning hypoxic, and I'm being hit with way too much radiation. And my liver is starting to turn me jaundice because it's not able to handle the poisons or filter out the poisons in because my kidney pressure's off. All right, and so then this is the D, which is the pregnant symbol. By taking an energy form and impregnating it, you tear the AN from the NA, you reverse the color symbols, and then they put in Troy. I tell Linda all the time, I'm like, the fire hydrants down at Fort Tottenlin, they read Troy, Troy. I was like, you've heard of Helen of Troy? Right, I'm Hella. London confirmed it when I went there in 1980s, and I'm in hell. I was like, but on the fire hydrant it says Troy, Troy, down in Fort Totten, and some of them say bury, Bury. So they buried me in hell, literally, and Troy, and some of them say WSNY. So it's the sour west, I suppose, for trajectory and vector with a little extra point in order to prop up the angler that keeps leaning over. I need something to prop it back up. Yeah, so they took the mirror image of if I have ANNA, they took the dots in the center. I don't know what they're calling that at this point. They put them in a paralysis, like an inverted hyperbole. And now I've got I think it's not, it's hyper, I always call it hyperbola or hyperbaric chamber. But they inverted it. The color dots, if I have one red, one gray, they inverted them, and they changed the inflection of the mirror from AN to NA, and then it changed the course of the machine, and that's currently where I'm being held captive as their prisoner of war. I don't know, do you call this a detention camp? I mean, I don't know what I did wrong, other than I needed to marry something called a Nicholas. It's a relation, it's an articulation. Louis, my father was born Louis Nicola. Nicola. That was my father. Indicative of the operative man in this Reich to kite situation with a kite and a string was supposed to be Nicole and Nicholas as an articulation. So this way, if there was a symbology or cartography and somebody was not in the alphabet or alpha beta system, but perhaps were in the beta Z system instead, the articulation wouldn't change. That still has not come to fruition for me. I still don't have the Nicholas to my Nicole. But my Louis still has the middle name Nicola, although he goes, for some reason, by Francis. On everything I've ever seen from this man, it says Francis, except his birth certificate and his travel papers say Nicola. And he just confirmed with me the other, maybe 2 months ago, that his actual middle name is Nicola. Francis is his confirmation name. Kind of an important point, you stupid shit. I mean, how did you become a custodian? Ever? Who put you in charge? Swear to fucking Christ, I hate humans. It's September 30th, 2021. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. I'm still in Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.